Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. It's Yvonne from Ginger Chick Rehab. I'm so glad to have you back today, and if you're new here and visiting my channel for the first time, welcome. I do lots of DIYs, trash to treasure, furniture flips with my husband Chris, and thrifting adventures to fit into the farmhouse decor. So in today's video, I am showing you how I upcycled and updated and made over 3 spice racks that I found at a thrift store that were just, in the wooden section, which is my absolute favorite section to go through because I know that I will find some finds that I get to paint up. So this is what today's video is all about, is how I updated 3 spice racks. So here are the vintage spice racks that I have picked up through my thrifting adventures. And I absolutely love doing spice racks. I think they are a multi-use item. I especially love when they have drawers or they have doors. I absolutely love these type of spice racks. I especially like the metal on that one. And then this one, is just your average Joe, homemade spice rack, but I know I can give it new life. And then this one, it's yet again, it's one of those with the cute little drawers in it, but not substantial. Me, meaning that if you put a lot of spices on it, it would topple over unless you had it hanging from the wall. Yet again, we are tag teaming these items, and the first thing Chris is going to do is to make this homemade one, so that it can stand alone by itself, so you don't have to put it on the wall. You can if you want to. So he's just going to be cutting that bottom part off and making it flush and level so that it can stand alone. And now for these other ones, they always have those hangers on them, and I wouldn't hang it on the wall, but somebody else might, but they can add their own hanging system. So for us, flipping and giving these new life, we will be taking these off. Sometimes on these vintage pieces, when you are removing those hangers, you have to kind of pay attention to see if one of those nails is one of the parts that's holding that top piece on. I find that a lot, that it is essential to the structure of the piece, so I will pull it off and then I will put that nail back in the bottom one, because that is essential for holding this top part on. So when we started to investigate on how to take the doors off, if we could, it was just kind of hinged with a nail. Clever idea, I have to say. So that was an easy way to take these doors off to be able to paint them. And the little knobbies on these type of drawers, you cannot take off. They're usually glued, no nails or anything that you can do anything about it. Along with those metal pieces. Oh, I forgot a tag. Oh, I'm glad that he spied that. Now for the one that Chris cut off for me so that it was, that it could stand alone, I'm just going to take the orbital sander on the bottom to make sure that it is nice and even. Sometimes, it's not quite as even, just, doing the rough cut on it. So now for this little spice rack that had the painted flowers, though they were cute, though I'm sure somebody's sad about it, but it's a thrifted item, and so I'm going to be sanding those off. Because if you're new to my channel, just because you can't feel that bump, as soon as you paint that, you will be able to see those flowers through your paint job. So sanding them smooth is the best way to get them so you don't see them through your paint. So for this homemade one, you could tell that they had screwed it into the wall because it had those 3 holes in the top. And so what I'm doing now is I'm going to fill them in with some spackle. But remember, it's a hole, so I needed to put some masking tape on the other side so it didn't sink, so that it stays flush. So now I have got my spice racks all, almost prepped, but right now we've got them taken apart. I've got any hanging systems off, any tags removed, any holes filled in that I do not want. Since this is just like a little small job, I'm just using this Ryobi multi-use tool where you can put a sanding head on. This is the only piece of these 3 that I need to be sanding. So I sanded the one that I had spackled, and now I'm just making sure that I blow off any excess dust and where I have the sand dust from the spackle. Now one more step before painting is I'm going to be giving them a good cleaning with the KRUD cutter. Just because you've done all that, they still are not ready. So the KRUD cutter just gets any residue, any oils, anything off of these, these thrifted pieces, that it'll help the paint adhere so much better. So you want to make sure that somehow you properly clean your pieces before painting so your paint adheres. And then, like that tag, don't forget to take any masking tape off if you had to spackle holes like I did. So Chris is testing out the sprayer again. I have to say that he's getting a little bit better at it, learning to control, but this is a smaller piece, but it is nice that he can use the sprayer on there to get into all those cubbies, because that is kind of a pain to have to paint. So it is nice that he is getting to spray paint them. And as you see, he puts the pieces on a piece of wood, and then he actually has a Lazy Susan, a turntable underneath that. That way he can turn the piece as needed, and then he can lift the board off when it is done being sprayed so he can work on the next piece. Then after letting that black completely dry overnight, one of our working days, and then the next night he's going through, and now he's giving them a coat of the Kills paint and primer in one, and we're using our same paint in the sprayer. It's just a little bit different of a system. It just, it pushes it out with air. So I absolutely love so far how the sprayer is working. It just leaves it so smooth. Of course, the white needed 2 coats, but white dries faster than the black. And so on this black spice rack, I am giving it a top coat of the Polycrylic just to seal that black paint in, so I'm able to distress this piece. So now that the Polycrylic is dry, I am taking a 150 sandpaper, and I am going to be running that sandpaper over the edges to distress this piece and give it the aged look that I am looking for. So when it comes to distressing the edges of a piece, all you're doing is you're taking that 150 sandpaper and you're pressing hard just on the areas that you want to show some of that natural wood through. And then I'm even doing the drawers and the doors of this little piece. I really want to give it that aged look. So the same thing, I'm just taking that 150 sandpaper, and then I'm just, going on the sharp edges where I can sand it to get it to that natural wood of this piece. So now when it comes to sanding the rest of the black piece, you don't want to use that sandpaper like you did. You want to use steel wool, the finest one. And what that does is it just takes that little bit of shininess and it gives something, I'm going to be waxing this piece, so it gives something for that wax to grab onto. If I didn't do that, it would just be shiny and the wax would just kind of be sitting there, so that just kind of opens up that top coat to let the wax that I want to use be able to sink in. Then after I get this all sanded and steel wool, I just take the air compressor, and that's nice to get out all the, because that dust kind of builds up in the little cubby holes. So an air compressor, or you could use a blow dryer. So to wax this black piece, my choice is the Waverly Antiquing Wax. I absolutely love this stuff. I try to link something that's similar. If I cannot find it, to link in my description, because, as the world goes. Anyway, so what I do is I just put it, on a piece of drop cloth. When I reupholster, I always save the cuttings so that I can use this as, something to stain with or something to wipe on this wax. So what I do is I just wipe on the wax, and then when I get it kind of like on where I want it to be, then I just take another rag if need be and wipe it off, any excess. And here I am just showing you the difference, the richness that Waverly wax does to this black. And if you noticed, I always leave my tape on. I don't want to, the wire does not need to be waxed. I do not need to, you have to worry about trying to clean that wax off the wires, so I just left the tape on. Now I will say this, the way, because we sprayed it, how much tape I had to use. It was a good workout getting the tape off, but well worth it, because look at that, is a kind of a coppery bronze color, just absolutely gorgeous with that black. Now I'll go and I am on to my distressing of the white ones, and so the same thing, I'm using a 150 sandpaper, and then I'm pushing down on those sharp edges where I want a little bit of that black to show through, and if I push a little harder I can get some of that wood. It all depends on how much pressure you put on your sandpaper, of how deep you're going to go. And then I will just lightly go over the rest of the piece. Luckily, the sprayer just made this so smooth. There's not any brush strokes because you didn't use a brush, but still, I just like to make sure there's no, any unevenness. Then after getting these two sanded, I'm going to just take the air compressor. Like I said, you can use a blow dryer too. It just helps you get all that dust off. When you have little corners like this, it kind of builds up, and so you don't want to move on until you get it dust free. So now I am going to be stenciling on these. So I am using my Cricut, and so on the littler of the spice racks, I'm just going to do sun dry. I like to kind of keep these neutral because you could use them for a spice rack. I use mine for essential oils. Somebody might have some other elixir type things that they want to use, and maybe somebody has some tiny, decorative items they want to. So I try to keep it very neutral when I'm doing these. Very seldom do I ever put spices on it. I mean, it's just my personal preference. When it came to that homemade one, by the time I got it finished, painted, I'm kind of iffy on if it is a spice rack or not. So I am just going to be doing this. This is from the design store of the Cricut, and I just typed in vintage and, collections or whatever, and I liked this here, right there it is. So I just clicked on it, highlighted it, made sure that I downloaded it into my library so I have it for later use. So, I want to be cutting these out at the same time. And on this vintage, I don't want it to cut separately. I want it to be attached to each other. So that's what I'm doing here. And then when I go to my mat, it will all cut out at once, and it'll cut out the word vintage at the same time. So with this little one, there's actually, you could have weeded this out two different ways. I could have just taken the center part out and left that scalloped edge and the vintage and then painted around that. But I want my scalloped edge to be painted and my vintage to be painted. So that's why I'm weeding it this way. So actually for this one, there was two different ways that you could have weeded this out to achieve two different looks. So now I am back out into the workshop, and I had already used the transfer tape to put these and centered them on using a ruler, making sure that everything was nice and centered where it was before I started painting. So what I'm doing here is, you remember I had a nice viewer tell me that if I use the same paint color as what the item I'm painting before I put my stencil cutter on, that I would not have bleed through. And I did a bread box like this, and I felt that it really did work. So heck yeah, I'm going to do it again. Who wants to deal with bleed under on your stencil? So that's what I'm doing here. I'm just using a makeup sponge that I get at the dollar store, just a little bit of the paint on it, just the dabbing technique. And then after that dry, which I usually use the blow dryer to help me along because am not patient for paint to dry. I'm just doing the same thing with Apple Barrel Multi-Use in black, and I just do a little bit of paint on, and then just do that dabbing technique. And as you see, to help me center, I really cut off the sides of the vinyl, and so I had put masking tape around the sides because I don't want to make a mess, and I buy my masking tape at the dollar store, so then I don't have to worry about making a mess out of something that I just, spent all that time painting on. So I absolutely think that, that everything's personal. If you think that you can stay inside the vinyl, go for it, but I'd rather not mess up my paint job. And as you see, I am using the blow dryer to help it along because, I'm not patient for paint to dry. And then I will be doing 2 coats of the black to achieve the color, the depthness of the black that I want. And then I don't share my sponges, you know, if I've done one in black and I've done one in white, I don't try to share. I buy those at the dollar store too. I mean, unless that it was completely dry before I went on to the next one. I don't want, yet again, I don't want to take a chance of messing up something that I have spent a lot of time painting and distressing. So does anybody else do this? You know, when you're kind of getting that paint out, I always try to put any paint that I can back into the bottle that I unused. That's why I like these, you know, paper plates that they're bendy, and then I hate wasting product. So now I'm drying them yet again, but at this time you know, the nice thing about, you know, when you use a flat or a mat, you can tell when it's not shiny that it's dry. So, and then also I like the blow dryer, one, to help it dry, and then two, it releases that sticky of that tape, so then I can pull that tape off, and then I will start removing the vinyl using the blow dryer also. So I'm just going to give a little quick top coat of this polycrylic over where I have stenciled. I'm not sure if somebody's going to be using these in a kitchen, you know, sometimes that spray pan, just for a little bit of protection, I'm just going to top coat that stencil. And now I'll just take a 320 sandpaper, and then I will just run it over where that polycrylic has dried, and just to take a little bit of that shininess off. Even though it's matte, it's shiny. And then I do want to distress my stencil just a wee bit to make it look aged, to go along with the distressing of the entire piece. Then I'll just take the blow dryer yet again. What a handy tool for a craft room. But what I'm doing here is that I am just making sure that I got all the dust off of these before moving on to my Varathane finishing wax. I love this stuff. It just seals and protects that white paint, and it just makes it nice and smooth. It's just a rub on and then rub any excess off. So now to make this sun dry, you know, little rack a little bit more farmhousey, I am just putting some chicken wire. This is a piece that I had left over, fits perfectly in the space. And now when you're using this, you want to make sure when you're using a staple gun on this kind of thin, you want to make sure that you have the thinnest, or you know, the smallest staples that you can, and the smallest that I can find is a 1/4 inch. I am stealing video from another project because apparently I did not hit record on my camera, so I wanted to be able to show, if this is the only video you've ever seen of me stapling chicken wire on the back of an item. As you see, I kind of center that staple over that wire, you know, to get it nice and tight. You know, so nice and secure on that chicken wire, but you really want to center it so you're not splitting the wood. And then I go back in with a hammer and make sure that it is hammered. I'm trying to flatten it out as much as possible when I'm doing this. And then at this point, I will be taking nippers and clipping it off as much and close as I possibly can. Then I'll go back through one more time and hammer it in, trying to flatten it as much as possible. So for the spice rack, that top section was very thin wood, so I did not want to try to staple. I did not want to split that wood. So what I'm doing here is I cut it as much as I possibly thought that I could, and now I'm taking a little bit of hot glue. And now at this point, you're going to have to hold it until it dries, you know, to keep that secure, you know, because hot glue is, you know, very playable. And so I'm just going to hold it until it dries. And then I go around on the side, and then just for a little reinforcement and that there's no sharp edges, I put a little bit of hot glue on every single one of those that I cut off. And I don't even remember what this shelf looked like by the end of painting this and cutting that so it could stand up. This is just a multi-use shelf now. Yep, you can use it for spices, you can use it for essential oils, or you can use it for some of your collectibles. It's just definitely a multi-use shelving system now. And I don't know about you, but I absolutely love adding chicken wire to some of my projects. I absolutely love this spice rack. I love that it has those little cubby drawers, and I like that I keep it very neutral with the sun dry. You know, yep, you can use it for whatever you want. And I absolutely think that this is absolutely beautiful. I love that bronzy, that brassy, that coppery, whatever that wire is, it is just beautiful. And this black just shows it off gorgeous. And that little applique at the top, I could not remove, but it was actually the same kind of coppery. So when I went to distress the piece, I also distressed that too. And I absolutely love giving these 3 pieces a new life, and now they can live on instead of being at the bottom of a thrift store shelf. So I thank you so much for watching today's video, and what did you think about my thrift store flips? What did you think about updating some spice racks? I know somebody was probably sad about the one with the flowers, but you know, yet again, it was donated, it was unwanted, and then I just update them, and that I kind of try to keep them neutral so you don't necessarily have to use them for spice racks. You know, like I said in the video, I use mine for essential oils and I absolutely love it. And then that third one, I was like, that could be almost a little bit of, you know, somebody's collection, so let's really keep that general. So I thank you so much for watching today's video, and like always, give me a comment of which one was your favorite. And if you're a subscriber to my channel, thank you so much for helping our channel grow. Just by watching our videos lets YouTube know that you like our kind of content. And if you'd like to subscribe to my channel, just hit that subscribe button along with the notification bell so you will be notified every time that I've uploaded a new video, and hit that like button. That really lets YouTube know that you like our kind of content. Thanks again for watching.